Hi, my name is Lisa. I am 45 years of age. I am the mother of five. I've been through the cycle of abuse for quite some time. The typical aspect of this story was a lot. I will speak upon those things that I am led to speak about because I don't want to continue to focus on that in a negative perspective. I am using that now to render that there is a way from that if you choose it. My situation was different. My situation was domestic dispute, and just an overall perspective of many things that encounter in my life upon them seasons. I was born in the 70s, and so in that time frame, it was just very much different. I was born to a young single mother. She did not know how to care for me. I really don't know that story because it was really never told to me. It was a lot of things that went on in that season that I've come to learn of more and more this day and time. It's a long story. It's a cycle of burdening a child with so much. It's a cycle of uninvited things that happen in life, um, scandals, manipulations, deception, deceit, greed, all kind of things that want to just use a child to just keep depressed in that same negative depression. All they could tell you is a dishonest excuse of their wants and to just embark in a child's life and just manifest in a life. And I found that out when I become more inclined in my spiritual journey. This day now is August the 8th. August is a month that certain things became aware of. I looked at it as just a typical abandonment that was awakening in my life. Years to pass, I got married, and I didn't know anything about marriage. Nothing at all. I was not educated. I was not learned to that perspective, but that person did know of me prior years way before. And that's sometimes when the enemy send others in, because towards the end he told me he came in to do a job. And years passed before he told me that. Just a lot of things, just the perspective of trying to destroy me. And one of the speakers came by and invited us to church one time, and I went to church in that season. And the lady was talking, and she was looking directly at me, and she said that um, he was sent in on assignment. I didn't know anything about that. I did not. I was not aware of it, and I'm still learning to this day. I have been beat in life. Um, they opened up a lot of spiritual doors in my life that I did not know anything about. It was a lot of spiritual bondage. It was just a lot of different other things that had happened in life. To the perspective of, and I had to get how I wanted to handle this. This is my story, um, not my story alone. This story is a story of a journey that was typically a fight for someone to just uh, allow that love to render known that there was real love, that there was true love, that what the enemy tried to destroy me of and take from me, that it was not happening. So on my journey in life, I came across a book. I will not call that name because I haven't asked that individual could I expose that information. But this comes out of a verse, and it states, "For it was not to my enemies that reproached me, then I could have borne it. But it was thy my equal, my guide, my acquaintance." Psalms 55, 12, and 14. Um, One side of the family, they want me to stay isolated while they continue to beat on me very badly. It's a constantly attack daily. My whereabouts, where I'm at, just the overall perspective of just having control over your life. And they begin to lose control. After my dad's passing, I start recognizing even more. It was even to the perspective of they was just trying to get things done to me and just get me from any perspective so they can control it. But see, this been it since birth. And as my dad began to tell me before his passing, he was an educator. He was a coach. He worked. Back in the 70s, that was back in the 70s. So he was blessed to render one of the first African American drillers in the Gulf. And that is something that the enemy tried to steal. The enemy still is operating around and try to steal the overall perspective of any birthrights. And I won't allow it. And God's not allowing it in truth, in the overall perspective, because everything that the enemy come at, God dismisses it. And it just keep coming back. The season of life is over in that situation, but they're not receiving it. They wants to fight it. They wants to fight even the perspective of their choices to beat on me. Sometimes you beat on a person in life, you have to recognize that, that's coming to an end. I am one of the ones that was left in church. So there's a lot of stuff along with that's being left in church. Also getting involved with different men. Also fighting the effect of females wanting me. They couldn't get me, so they would tell dishonest stories on me. Even fighting to the perspective of just maintaining my self-worth. Just knowing that I am worthy no matter what anyone say. Just dealing with family and their identity crisis and their excuses to want to manipulate and control my life. I practically raised my children in a shelter. And it's been a fight. And the enemy has been trying to destroy me. I'm still legally married to that individual. He chose to go on. Come to find out, he believed in having more than one woman. And we know that men operate like that, but at the same time, he wanted to come in to rob me so that him and others can run off with what they did. And now it's just typically a mix. And they're chasing after greed, and that greed is just destroying them. And I stay out of that. I just choose to move on in a different perspective. So I came across the book, and when I started reading the book, and it tells me it was a custom in that time for uninvited people from the streets to come into a home after a certain time during a feast. So in that perspective, it just, to me, in my experience in life, there was a lot of uninvited things in my life. A lot of ones that was coming into my life to feast out of my life. And at this point, God has commanded blessings on my life. But the commanded blessings on my life wants to bring the enemy to attack that. And I don't have to accept it. I wasn't trained for the battle. But because God has given me mental capacity to hold that. Now, there is days that the enemy just wants to destroy me and want to break me down to nothing. It came. I'm grateful for that. And everybody's not that strong in the mind. Did everyone want to feast? Yes. They threw me so far out there in the streets till it was pathetic. At that same time, I had to recognize that even though they did that, I had street love and didn't even know that that real love and truth was. And I think that the enemy didn't find out about that until years later when they began to recognize that. So God don't expose everything to everybody. So when you become to recognize, even in that season, you all was being told the overall perspective of, what happened. And I'm grateful for that. So yes, there was many that came into my life and to feast. I'm here today to say to you, in that situation, you're never alone. And I mean not in a deceptive never, you never alone. There are so many that are scared to leave the situation that they're in. There are so many that are scared to just walk away from that perspective. But when you walk away from that perspective, make sure you walk away in the correct way. Because the enemy comes up against you even when you going into um, a shelter. When you going into a shelter, of course things happen. The enemy wants you to go back out there, want to lure you back out there to where you come from. And in the survivor of my situation is there was much having to speak positive affirmation over me. Oh, they just tried to strip me and beat on me and do me any kind of way because I was not in the knowledge of what was rightfully mine. And then I kept getting manipulated by those that pretend to care but were just re-victimizing me. I went through, I think I counted, I took my children through 10 shelters. They had a break somewhat, maybe it was just a year or so. Um, within the time frame of 2007, after that, I started moving. Small sector of 2008. After that, I just started moving. And throughout the years, I took them through so many shelters. Um, and they was young, and they hung on in there, and they did. So there was a lot of me just telling them, it's not what it looked like, the best of what I knew, because I wasn't taught a lot about that situation. Like I said, I was used in different perspectives, and they continue to want to keep that cycle going. Because anytime someone have done that toxic building, if they don't have you, they cannot continue on. It's not like going to get somebody else to build, because they need that value of worth to keep utilizing. And in that perspective, you have to watch that. You don't allow the enemy to keep using you. Sometimes the enemy get itself in a situation, and then it wants to come at you because it done that situation. But as one counselor told me before, you don't have to live in that situation. You don't have to live in a negative perspective of what a spouse chose to walk out on you and abandon you. And then that was just a game. So ladies, you all have to recognize. And then to the men's, if there is any men's, there are women that plays games as well. There are women that play games with men's in order to go in to target another man and to rob that man. So it's just not the man's perspective. They are called partners, partners in crime. So, and it's not just a physical hurt or crime. It's just to come in and just steal from you. Even though if I'm in that prison aspect of the enemy, I already know that I'm shielded. I already know that it's known. And I mean that known in a way that there's nothing that the enemy can get. I know that there is many negative things that are said, and I am already prepared to not allow the enemy to continue to use me, because there are ties that was done in my life that the enemy thought they're going to get away with. They was chasing after fame and fortune, and there ain't no better way is to render your own story. Everybody can write a story. They can live in a fiction world, non-fiction world, or whatever it is. It's nothing like the real. It's nothing like the real. Nothing like the real. So this is Ace Girl's story. Ace Girl's story comes from the perspective in just giving my dad honor, and just my dad's family honor, that how they still prayed for me even in them silent times that nobody know anything about. And that's, to me, no matter what he done in that restoration, he was godless sorry, and he restored that. And he told me, until you godless sorry. And so he said, sometimes others in your life have to render godless sorry. So there are some others in life that are not going to tell us that they are sorry. When God brings you to the perspective and put you in the face of your enemy and what your enemy has done to you throughout the years, are you going to hate that person? Or are you going to choose to move on? And then some of them just don't want to accept that. They will say ugly things to you. They will say despiteful words to you. They will lash out at you, and they will call you trash. But one thing my dad told me about that is, when you have owned that trash, ain't nothing that they can say about it. Nothing they can say about it. So sometimes others see what somebody else done, and it don't change you as a person. It changes them other individuals. So if they can't get it, they got to find a way to beat you out of it. And so in life, they used that beat game on me. And they just kept doing it until doing it. I mean, it was just like a play, and it's just an overall perspective. And they just left me out there in the field. Um, they just did. And now when God came and blessed it in the field perspective, that doesn't make it any better either. It wasn't fair then, but the truth perspective of real favor, favor ain't fair. I don't look for fame, fortune, and riches. At the same time, when God has blessed you, you live in that blessing. You don't allow the enemy to lure you into that self-pity mode of none-deserving, none-excuses, because that's what they do. They come in to hinder your life. They want to live out your life if you allow it. So my thing is, I'm Xing abuse. That's not no curse. That's not no perspective. Um, that's just the exit of abuse. And then another perspective is batters up. So we're not. I mean, it's over with. That batter syndrome. We're not gonna continue to allow that. We're just not. Um, we're not going to continue that batter syndrome. We're just not. It's time for me to move forward in life, and being stuck in that same cycle with others that are still in that wilderness, that don't want to go nowhere, don't want to choose to go nowhere. That's their choice, and to keep their mind prisoned in that prison mindset. Um, I was put in poverty because I had better. And what meaning better, my dad told me my dad he had better for me. But because they didn't want me there in that choices that they made not to allow me to go there, they have to suffer that consequences now. And I'm not saying suffer it, but that's a choice they made because everybody just wanted to get what they want. I didn't get a chance to learn my mama. Now it's coming around to the situation of who had involvement with that. My mom was found dead in her apartment in 2017. We don't know the story. God's revealing that story. From someone saying that they heard a loud thump in the apartment, and come to find out it wasn't nothing but greed and lust and want. They was trying to run and get a quick fast. How my dad say they think they're gonna get a quick ranking out of a sorry excuse. And he said sometimes when you move others, when a life is taken, that brings in more problems because it was not time for someone to go, and you know when it wasn't time for someone to go because there's no peace. There's no peace in the situation. There's no peace within the enemies getting in God's business and trying to control it and all of this other stuff. I didn't get to really know her. We didn't talk, but anything she asked me for, if I had it, I would give it to her. She was trying to communicate with me, but I wasn't understanding in those seasons. She took on a lot of burdens. She did. She was, and at the end, she was trying to get herself as she should. And they said that she did state that if I could get to Lisa, I know she would help me. And in that season, and then that just made me feel, that she knew, despite of what happened, that Lisa would render there. And that let me know that she know that God is a forgiving God and that God does not hold grudges like that. There was a lot of chaos in the family. Yes, abuse is a nasty, ugly, nasty, uninvited things that happens, that goes on. It has all type of shame and uncleanness and hidden deep perspective. We have to get to that root cause effect. And that root cause effect is that nobody want me with him. They didn't want me with my dad, and they didn't want me, and by my mom being young, but she moved on. She had a husband, and then she had other children, so her husband carried her for a while until he had his heart attack. And there was things that, happened, with her. She lost a child, and I remember that because they put me in that room that day. I don't know why they did that. She lost a child, and I don't think she overcame that. She was just dealing with a lot. The enemy beating on her so bad. The enemy used her as a toy. And we rest assured now that when the enemy comes at us and saying this, using us for a toy, you look at that lie in the face and say that's your excuse or something that you can't get, and you have to use a cheapskate out. Because when you call me a toy, I turn it into a toy corporation. I got just that much faith, and I can keep on continuing to believe on. When you throw a person in somebody else's household and leave a person there and don't nurture the person, don't care for that person, when somebody else start to invest in that person and build that person in accuracy and in truth, you can't get mad. So don't start using the color of no one's skin in order to make excuses, because I got taught of that about my dad. You can have a white skin but have a filthy dark soul. So I got educated on that perspective. Now that opened my eyes to another whole different perspective. So changing out in that perspective, I began to get educated on that. There is times in life when others just, how I can say it, when they just not happy for you. No matter what you do for them, they're just not happy for you. Lisa was always, Lisa, you got it? Yeah. She was always that. Them younger days when I didn't know anything, I would just sit out there and thought I was out there drinking a beer and just having a old dandy time. Well, none of that. I was just being manipulated, cheated, stole, stalked, humiliated. All that imposing spirits wanted to come along, just hang around. All that old dead, dry beat that wanted to hang around, and now they making themselves look a fool because it's on the big screen that they're exposing themselves, and they think that they're attacking me, but God is getting ready to turn it around and even show them even more. The more that they find out, that's the more angry they get. Then when they find out that the enemy done used them in such a bad way, I don't think that they're grasping the whole truth. And sometimes God don't allow them to see everything that you see. So walking away from domestic violence, that takes a whole lot of courage. And especially with me, because it was the domestic dispute in my situation. It was all fighting about property and who owned this and who owned that and who made excuses about this and then who made excuses about that. And I'm looking like, where did all this come from? But when I became to rent around my dad in 2013 and got saved, life began to change and life began to become very hectic. I was at my dad's house, but they did not want me there. I was at my dad's house, and that brought in more problems. Everybody wanted to control Lisa again. So I began to see exactly where all the abuse was coming from. All the dispute. In the spiritual abuse. Because spiritual life was wrecked that I didn't know anything about. It was tore up all kind of ways. And that promise that was restoration that happened in my life. So I will start speaking more and more about that. I'm going to gather more information. And again, this is A's Girl's story. And like I said, the family is incorporated in this situation. There is a lot of ownership that wants to take in life. And to you ladies, and if there is any men looking in, sometimes you just have to tell those family, no. The ones that have known better through the years, no. And then you just have to render that. Sometimes you can't work for something that was not yours. And now they have a situation that they just can't, I don't know if they haven't found, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but it was always about money. And I don't want that. I don't want it from that perspective. God is in the blessed business, and God blessed me. But there's also many that didn't like that. And they dishonored that, and they devalued it. And that pushed me further away when I seen that got devalued. That didn't nobody want me to know anything in that way. The other side of the family want me to learn and want me to get educated to that perspective of that God has advanced me from that thrown out there in them streets to another perspective. And some of them just can't get over that I'm not out there. And getting called back, it's like, that's not the perspective because where we're at now, because it's just got too much conflict going on. And what I mean going back is sometimes you can't go back into that situation. If you go back, that's defeating the purpose. You know, because when I left, didn't nobody know, and I guess they really never thought I would. And now they have to show, and not show, but they have to render the truth because there's no other way now. I have to move forward. There's just no other way. At the same time, when I have a job that I have to go down and do, that's just a job that I have to do. At the same time, others want what you have and not happy for you when you choose to better yourself, shall I say. So, and you could tell when they have you in things because they want to stay so connected to you. You could tell when they have worked all kind of influence around you because they need you to keep that excuse together. So anytime someone has lied on you, you don't have to worry about it. You may not see it then. You just put the truth of accuracy. If you believe in the real prayer, the true perspective of prayer, it'll get them and telling things that you don't even know. My ex was on the stage just telling everything that he could ever do to me. And if you would hear him correctly, you would hear everything he told, even down to that he was involved with another man. And that's not to expose him. It's just how God works. It's how God works. And now that's not my part to judge, but at the same time, it's him to wonder if he's going to change his life and move in another direction, or is he going to try to still live in that perspective like he was living hidden. So when my dad's life got toxic, to me that made me think, you know, how someone just carried a cross all that years and nobody couldn't stand it, and he carried it very well. And after all what was done to him about me, and he didn't say a mumbling word, he could have said no. He could have said no, I'm not going to run to bother him with it, I'm not going to have it. But at the same time, he just told me that you couldn't stand to know what they done to you. And when they done it, in the perspective of, they miserable. They miserable, they not happy. And then they have to tell a story in order to keep another story going that I X out. And like I said, abuse is X. So their story not sticking. Their story not sticking. So if you continue to allow them to go on and do the same thing they do daily, you have to kick them out, and you have to mean that they kicked out. That don't mean you don't not have to love them, but you have to just show them that you done all of this and you was not honorable to God's money. You misused God's money, and you took God's money for advantage. And sometimes that person haven't done all the work. It may look like it. And even if they did have done all the work, why are you still in the way? So sometimes you have to keep them out of your way. And you really have to keep them out of your way. So that perspective brings me to invisible epidemic. Because that part was about blind judgment. And you have so many that comes in your life with blind judgment. And they really come in your life with blind judgment. They want you to feel frustrated. And they attack you, and they want you to think that keep you frustrated, keep you just in a whirlwind. That's some excuses of entities just try to roam around your life. You have to know what others and their perspective, because mine was a lot of influence that was worked around my life throughout the years. When I become aware of that, I started to know how to get rid of that. Invisible epidemic, awareness that brings knowledge, and knowledge creates environment for change. So that part I'm going to stop at today and kind of educate yourself on that. Knowledge create an environment for change. So now it's the perspective of trying to control. I mean, others can control you if you allow them to. They want to know your whereabouts. They want to know what you think, especially if they obsess with you in the spiritual aspect. They compete and they comparing themselves. You don't do that, because if you compare yourself to me, you're going to fight a losing battle. And that losing battle is going to show you every day that you try to work and impose in my day, it's not going to work. You could run around the building 25,000 times, because before I step in the building, that true praise is in there. Before you try to, how they say is discriminate against me, you're not. So once they start doing all that, you have to expose them. And when you start shining that light on them, it shows who they truly are and what they meant from the first get-go. Because there are others that had used me severely, very bad, and just ran off in life. And to the perspective of knowing that I am cared, and I'm very much cared, because if I wasn't cared for, they wouldn't run and steal every day. They're running themselves ragged, trying to steal out of the word of God, and that's the worst thing you could do to me. They're running themselves ragged to compete for something that is already told not to do. So God separated me from that a long time ago, and I'm sorry that it's just not coming to the true perspective of that. I think it was time for that. To know, never let anyone speak down on you in that way. There are jobs, and then if you want to advance your career, your education, you have to want it. You have to want it, because the enemy used me for years and thought it was going to get in somebody else's house. And to this day, it is no. And they will use your no and play with it. And they just played all over my life. They just played all over my life. So we're going to show them the promise of those that do care and love. Because the enemy cannot stand the word when it has went forth. And it will steal out of God's house in order to make itself feel worthy. So it was not welcome in that house, and it cannot reside there. It came in to destroy God's house. It made it into a den of thieves. And so I'm so glad to say this, and in that perspective, that God has brought it to the truth. And that I'm learning every day, and I'm going to move forward every day. This that I speak of this day, and know the beginning of the day is not the end of the day. And if there's anything that is going on in your life, do not sit there and go through it by yourself. There is always someone that is help. There's help. If your family is very controlling, start asking for someone that can help you, because that is something that others don't go, because they do try to get control of your life and stay in your life, because that's what happened with mine. They try to stay so much in my life to keep me from not learning. They did not want me to learn. And when my daddy started learning me, they did not like that. It was not like. They was fighting. They have been fighting all them years, and just forgot that child that they just left there. And it's just not fighting out, but they want me to submit to what they want me to submit to, and want to make it hard for me. And then by me being legally married to this man, he's using me spiritually with the other women that believe in all this other stuff, and I just don't. So I can pull that back in control, and that is in the court of perspective. And what they do in the court of perspective, whatever they dishonor, that's their problem of accountability. But I'm moving forward. I have made my decision. I've been married for going in 11 years. He walked out the first year. So that was just a paper documentation. So they played all over that. He ran off and started building other stuff behind my back. The women's, and you know how women's are. They pigs. They metals, and they just made a mess out of themselves. And now God got them out there running and telling everything on themselves. And that's how it gets. My daddy told me that. He said prayer is very powerful. Now they have to tell on themselves what they really truly tried to do. Because my history speaks for itself, and it does, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful to come from a perspective that did speak over me and pray for me, and that's a line of grandma and grandpa and all that other stuff. So the uninvited, and also know, just aware. Knowledge create environment for change. Everybody may not like your change in your own way, and they don't have to. So I speak over that, and as of this day, I try to move forward. I am not. I still go through the day, but now I recognize I will not allow the enemy to have my day. And I noticed the midweek, if the enemy cannot get what it wants. That's why churches got to bring back that midweek praise. And if churches don't bring back that midweek praise, you get that music in your house, you turn that music on, and you start praising yourself. because the enemy is out to steal that message. I was just saying earlier that everybody got to get together, and I'm not pushing no religion on nobody. You start speaking positive affirmation if you don't believe in certain things, but do not give your day to the negativity, because that's all. At the end of the day, that's all what it is, negativity. Do not give that negativity energy. That negativity wants you to see what it's doing so it can work it on you, and when it don't have no truth to it. No truth to it. Because at the end of the day, if someone's trying to live in your life, you don't carry the load for the whole day, and they just joyride. That joyride has came to an end. You have to know your own joy. And that's a perspective of that. I'll speak more to you all and give a little more perspective of my life story, which was my story, but my life, they just lived out of it and controlled it. I'm just telling you, I was just an empty shell. An empty shell of what I mean, not no shell for no bullet, just a empty, how you could say, just an empty child that was just left. And they went on and built things around me. And they did. They built things around me. And I think everybody else is just overwhelmed at how I'm just handling it. Some is not in agreement how I'm handling it. They want to go and drop a lot of them. And what I mean drop a lot of them, I mean just really get rid of them. Because a lot of them don't like it because this affected a lot of others' lives. You know, in families, that affected different stuff. I could just imagine what my dad's family went through with this mess. And not speaking of ugly of that side of the family, but their beliefs was to keep me hindered from him. And his say was that they was blackmailing him. So, you know, that brought in a whole lot of perspective. So sometimes in life, we don't understand why others do what they do. They do what they do. And some of them will say it in a minute. I just got to do what I got to do. Yes, you can do what you got to do. But that does not mean that by no means that do going to work. And I don't get wrapped up in that. So we're going to stop on that today. Again, this is A's Girl's story. Stay encouraged. Do not let anyone keep you in a negative cycle. Study the cycle of abuse. Study family behavior. You know, get yourself to a place to where you get real healing. You don't have to accept that. They have molested my whole life. And the sexual part of it and just life itself. So I couldn't even tell my children about life because I didn't know anything about it. So if you have your children, you love on them, you tell them you care for them, now my children get to see the truth. Because I didn't know right from wrong. They didn't teach me none of that. They did not teach me that. They didn't teach me my left or my right. And I had to just learn that. So on that note, just know that things happen in this world. We have ugly ways, ugly behaviors, and you do not have to accept that behavior. You don't have to accept the defamation of a laugh out loud excuse of not to love out loud. Don't accept anyone's negativity. If they cannot love you, you don't have to have them in your life. And there are others out there that are willing to support you. And that is one of my things in the future. I want something, you know, a support session where those that feel like that they don't have no support. You know, if I can help you in a way, you know, you just call on me. As long as you ain't using me. And not to say that in my future, if I get married in my future, and I don't know how that is at this point, you know, you just have to have that support. And if that's something that my future husband is willing to stand behind me with, to know that there are others that are out there that need that support, but at the same time, not the manipulation, because that's how manipulators get in. Because we always know anytime you try to bring something good, the enemy is going to send his assignments. Just can't stand it. You could just render every message that is posted on social media. The enemy has lurkers out there ready to attack that. And that's why the speaker said that they are equipped and they are ready, able, in truth. And the attack that the enemy have on their life and how the enemy is just trying to bring them down because they don't want that word, that real word. And that's what Joyce Meyer speaks of. She said anytime you is under the truth, the enemy attacks you. Now, you can tell when you with somebody and they speaking a whole lot of blah, playing in God's time. At the same time, you have to recognize the truth. So there is much out there. You have to research it. You have to look for it. Others just don't tell things now, but there is things out there that just help others. Not besides just to sit and have a pity party in negativity all the time, all day long. That's not what it is. Stay encouraged. This is A's Girl's story, and this is a conclusion of this night. Enjoy the night.